Hello, guys, and welcome to another episode of Cocoa in the Sun podcast. I am your host, Malika Critchlove, and I am very, very, very blessed to be here today to do this podcast. I really love to do this podcast. Doing the podcast puts me in such a good mood. Like I'm smiling now. I don't even know why I'm smiling. So it must be a sign that this is what I'm supposed to do, regardless of views or listeners. I have to figure out how to increase those things, but I think if it's meant for someone, they'll find it, right? Trust in the universe. Um, so hello guys. Today we actually start the book, right? So the last podcast we just did an introduction. I don't know why every time I start the podcast, I feel like my allergies start up. So the last episode, we did the introduction from Tom Kenyon and Judy Sion. And today we're going to actually start the first chapter and get introduced. Really tough to see to Mary Magdalene, see what she has to say. Any insights today? No, I don't think so. I don't even know if you guys enjoy the insights. So I guess this episode will just be the book. Okay. Again, this is the book. The Magdalene Manuscript. The Alchemies of Horus and the Sex Magic of Isis. By Tom Kenyon and Judy Sion. I think the name of this book is amazing. Anyways. So the color I'm using to highlight the book is blue. I'm feeling blue for this book. Maybe it should be pink, like a rose. But I don't know, I'm feeling blue for this book. So it's the blue. We had a blue vibe. What does blue vibe mean? I don't know. I remember I saw like a blue rose thing. So maybe that's why. Blue rose. I don't know. Also really into coconut water when I'm feeling off and need to be rehydrated. Love coconut water helps others, but I really find that I have to have always in the house. It helps me balance these energies. Okay, so we start. 1. Yo, did they give us a table of contents? Oh. Okay, so 1. I was raised in the understanding of magic. So this isn't Mary Magdalene talking now. This is her talking through the channel. So when you hear I, it's Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene talking about herself. Right? I was raised in the understanding of magic. Aren't you excited? I'm so excited. Okay. I was raised in the understanding of magic. My father was from Mesopotamia and my mother from Egypt. Before I was born, she prayed to Isis to bless her with a child. I am that child. And I was known as Mary Magdalene. I just love it. So her mom's from Mesopotamia, her dad's from Egypt, and her mom used to pray to Isis. When I was 12 years old, I was sent to study with a secret sisterhood of initiates under the wings of Isis. I was trained in the secrets of Egypt, the alchemies of Horus, and the sexual magic of the Isis cult. When I met who you call Yeshua, I had passed all my initiations. I had prepared for the meeting with him by the well. I'm going to underline this because I think this is significant. When she met Yeshua, that she had gone through all of her initiations. If we remember from the Hathor material, they said that we are living our initiations in our daily lives. So for me, this is saying when I complete my initiations in my daily life, then I would have been prepared for the meeting of my divine partner. I'm underlining this. This is what I got from it. I don't know if anybody else got that. When I met who you call Yeshua, I had passed all my initiations. I had prepared for the meeting with him by the well. Sorry, I'm just really excited. The Gospels recount me as a prostitute. For all initiates of my order wore a gold arm bracelet that was a serpent. And it was understood that we practiced sexual magic. And in the eyes of the Hebrews, we were whores. Wow. So I want to say here, because I got my own understanding in a dream. I think they call it clear recognizance. Clear. It's like something, it wasn't like a vision or anything I saw, it was just like an understanding I got. In a dream. Clear recognizance. Clear. I don't know what's it called. Yeah, clear recognizance is literally translating meaning a clear knowing. So what I got from that was that because at the time I was listening on Audible to Mary Magdalene Revealed, and a lot of it, well, parts of it, she was clarifying that Mary Magdalene was never a prostitute. Also, in the beginning of this book, you see Judy Sion stress that also. So what I understood was that was important. The truth of it was important to be known, that she wasn't a prostitute, but also that even if she were, she would not be any less his beloved. That if she were a prostitute, she would have been just as loved and just as valuable as if she were not one. That this focus on whether she was or was not a prostitute was a human thing that we do where we categorize people and their value based on their experience here, and all of this is just an experience and a learning and an understanding so we could learn more about ourselves, right? So that the all can learn more about itself in different situations and different circumstances and yeah, it's sacredness, right? So it was really specific that it didn't matter once we confirmed that she wasn't one. So it wasn't dismissing that she was not a prostitute, that truth needed to come forward as well as like in levels or like a spiral, right? Like they called her a prostitute to limit the divine feminine, that she was not a prostitute. And so this would help open up the divine feminine to more. And then once she would open up to more, that they wanted me to understand that whether or not she was a prostitute was not the issue, that if she were one, she would have been just as valued and just as loved, that no one holds more value than another, right? That's what I got in the dream. Like it was very specific that regardless of if she was a prostitute or not, it would not have made a difference. You would have still loved her because they were meant to grow through that love. Okay. Anyways, so it continues. I'll read that part over again. The Gospels recount me as a prostitute. For all initiates of my order were a gold, I'm sorry, I said were, and it's war. The Gospels recount me as a prostitute. For all initiates of my order wore a gold arm bracelet that was a serpent. And it was understood that we practiced sexual magic. And in the eyes of the Hebrews, we were whores. When I saw Yeshua and our eyes met, I understood that we had been destined for each other. What I am about to tell you has not been known except by those who were with me. Many legends abound as to what happened, but for me, it is a story of deepest love. This is the story I wanted. I wanted the love story. That's what I wanted. That Yeshua had a vision of the world does not touch me. My story is a love story. Yeah, I'm a hopeless romantic. Many people followed Yeshua, and the opportunities for us to be alone together were very few. It is not written in the Gospels, for no one knew, only the closest to us. Before Yeshua went to the Garden of Gethsemane, we conceived a child, and her name was to be Sarah. 2. The story I am about to tell sounds fantastical. I remember the reeds of Marie de la Mer, although then, of course, it was not called that. It is a place where our boat came to shore. Sarah was quite young, not quite 1 year old. I was torn by grief and amazement. I was there when Yeshua was crucified. I saw him in the tomb and wrapped him with his mother beside me. I will forever remember the smell of myrrh. That was one of the ointments we used. Yeshua appeared to me in his luminous light. I could not believe my eyes, and so I touched his wounds. The disciples were jealous that he had come to me first. It was strange to have my beloved transported to another realm, another world, while I and our daughter crossed the Mediterranean alone. We were no longer safe and had to leave Egypt, for that is where we had gone. When we crossed into the shores of what was to become France, it was all wilderness. We were met by priestesses of the Isis cult, and we headed north to the protection of the Druids, for Isis had spoken to them, and they had heard the call to protect her daughter, Sarah. And so we headed north to another great body of water and crossed over into what was to become England. And there we were secreted up into the most sacred heart of the Druids, to the Torah and the Glastonbury. Although we were safer than we had been in Israel or Egypt, the Roman influence extended up into England as well, and we were hidden. We lived in this area for many years, and Sarah wedded a man whose heirs would become the Templar Knights. And I went north into Wales and lived by the sea for the rest of my days. So it seems that she they landed in France first, where they were met by the priestesses of the Isis cult, and headed north to the protection of the Druids into England. And then she settled after her daughter was married to in Wales. I will say this, that in those years when I lived alone by the sea, Yeshua would often visit. Of course, it was not like before, for his body was more energy than flesh, more light, but still it was extraordinary to be with him again. When I died, he was there and took me into what some call heaven, but it's just a place in the soul. 3, I begin my story at the well, for in many ways, that is when my life truly began. All the years previous were preparation for this meeting. The morning I knew something, that morning, I knew something was stirring, a kind of excitement, a trembling in the arms and legs. Before I even met him, I was already at the well when he arrived. I had already sunk my jar into the shaft, and he helped me raise it. Some of the apostles saw my gold serpent bracelet, and assuming me to be a whore, were aghast that the master would help such a one. But this did not touch me. I was in another world, transported by the eyes of Yeshua. When our eyes met, it was as if I was looking into all of eternity, and I knew that he was the one that I had been prepared for, and so did he. I continued at the fringes of those who followed him, and in the evenings we would go off together. Not every evening, for he was constantly sought after. I, who was trained in the alchemies of Horus and the sex magic of Isis, was considered to be highly advanced by my teachers. Yet the first time in Yeshua's arms, I was a trembling woman, and I had to fight to find that central pathway through my desire to the highest throne, for that was my training. Yeshua and I, using the techniques that I had been trained in, as well as the methods he had learned in Egypt, were able to charge his car. Remember the Hathor talk about the car body, the energy body. We're able to charge his car, his energy body, with greater light and greater force, so that he could more easily work with those who came to him. And so it was. And I still find it ironic that the Gospels report that I was at the well when Yeshua arrived, but those many nights when Yeshua and I were alone, he came to my well to draw from me the powers of Isis to build and strengthen himself. 4, I stand in time now, looking at all of this as if it were a dream, and yet so still vividly clear. My heart trembles as I recount the story as if it were yesterday. That first night with Yeshua is sketched within my mind as clear as the skies over Jerusalem. After I had been able to pass through the desires of myself as a woman and ascend the path into spiritual alchemy in which I was trained, I could see Yeshua's spirit form, already luminous, already brilliant with light. A dove was above his head. Golden rays of light poured forth from it. The seals of Solomon, of Hathor, of Isis, of Anubis, and Osiris were in his spirit form. They were signs that he had passed through these initiations. There were other symbols I did not understand, for they were from cultures I had no knowledge of or training in. But of the Egyptian seals of which I knew, he was on the path of the high god Horus. But he had not yet passed through his death initiation. And I knew in my trembling heart that this is why I had been drawn to him at this time, to fortify his soul with the powers of Isis and the cosmic mother, so that he could pass through the dark portal and attain the Horus. That night, after we had made love and wielded and blended our spirit bodies together, the action of alchemy having begun between us, Yeshua drifted off to sleep. As I held him in my arms, I felt a turning within me, a desire to protect him, a desire to be always with him, and the knowledge, like the edge of a cold knife, that we would be parted by forces greater than my desire. Pride. The church would have you believe that I was a whore, but I tell you now that the church is the whore. For she would have you believe that woman is tainted and that the sexual passions between a man and a woman are evil. Yet it is here in the magnetics of passion that the womb of ascension is created. The secret of secrets was known by all initiates of Isis, and yet I had never imagined that I would be the one to bring it into fullest expression in union with such a one as Yeshua. For me, the journey is of my spirit and heart. But for those who wish to know the physical journey after Yeshua's crucifixion, I and his mother, Mary, Joseph of Arimathea, his 12-year-old son Aaron, and two other young women set off from northern Egypt. Our course took us ironically east before we could turn westward, and we had to stop for provisions along the way, as our boat was very small. Our path took us to Malta and the tiny islands of Udish, from there to Sardinia, and to the trip of what is now the sunk Terror, finally landing at Sainte Marie de la Mer and making our trek northward through Rennes-le-Château into northern France and across the Channel into what is now England. We settled in Glastonbury for several years until Sarah was 12. So I'm going to highlight the course that they took. I think I should also highlight the initiates that she said Jesus had. What was above his head? Okay. Upon her 12th birthday, we set off for the place among the reeds where we had landed. There, as close to Egypt as was safe for us to go. I initiated my daughter into the cult of Isis and bathed her in the waters of the Mediterranean in accordance with the teachings I had been given. We then returned to Glastonbury until Yeshua's and my daughter Sarah wedded at age 16. She married into a well-known family whose heirs became the Templars, although at the time the Templar Knights did not exist. This family bloodline through Sarah would be carried into the Templars themselves. When Sarah was married and secure in her new life, I headed north for Wales and lived in a small stone cottage by the sea for the rest of my days. Behind my cottage, there was a stream that came out of the hill, and I would sit there many days. For there was a time when this stream split in two, and the two streams followed each other. And then one veered off to the left and one to the right. And I would sit there in between them thinking about the stream of my life and the stream of Yeshua's, how for a while our lives flowed together and then parted. 6. I will forever remember the first time Yeshua came to me after his resurrection. It was a new moon and the sky was clear. I love new moons. So, I love new moons. I've told you all this. Like, I feel the new moon the most. A light fog hung over the heather, and everything was silver from the light of the moon and stars. I saw a figure approaching me on the windy trail that led to my cottage. Ironically, I had just gone outside to draw water from the well, and there he was. He looked the same, yet with a radiance unmistakable. My eyes filled with tears, my heart trembled. I ran to him and stopped short. I remembered his words to me right after the resurrection. Do not touch me yet, he had said then, for I am not ascended to the Father. Oh, how I, an initiate of Isis, have yearned all these years to set the record straight. What did he learn? What did he mean by these words? For the Christians have inherited only a part of the truth. The greater part of his truth is hidden within the mysteries of the Great Mother. And because the church sought to disenfranchise woman and all that is feminine, it sealed away his truth. And the truth has to do with the car body itself. What we learn as initiates to call the etheric double or spiritual twin. For the car body, when charged with enough energy and vitality, looks like the physical body. But unlike the physical body, the car body is not made of flesh, but of energy itself, energy and light. And so when Yeshua came to me after his resurrection, he was in his car, but it had not been stabilized yet, for he had not gone to the Father, meaning into the great spirit of his own soul. So before he could do this, he had to pass through the portal of death and travel through the underworld of his own being. I'm going to try that. He did this for two reasons, as I understand it. The first was as a master soul, to do such a thing brings great power to the car. And the second reason was to cut a passage through death itself, so that others could follow and pass through the dark road more easily by following the trail of his light. And so that first night when we were rejoined, I feel it now still vividly clear and strong. My heart filled with joy at being with him again. He came to me that night just before midnight and left just before dawn. In those hours we lay together, our car bodies interconnecting yet again. No need for talk. Our communication was telepathic, and without the physical act of sex, the serpent power within him joined the serpent power within me and climbed upward along the sacred parts of our spines to the throne of the crowns of our heads, sending me into sheer ecstasy and bliss. And this was how it was for many years. He would come to me this way several times each year. Sometimes we would speak. Most of the time was in union. I asked him where he went in these times when we were not together. He said that he had gone to many sacred places throughout the earth, and that he had met with many different peoples, and that he was laying a path of light. During one of his visits, I asked him to explain to me this rather strange concept. He drew a circle onto the dirt floor of my cottage, and then what I recognized as two triangles intersecting to make the seal of Solomon, becoming the Star of David. He said that there were many lands that we, in this part of the world, did not have knowledge of. Many of these lands had points corresponding to the points of the seal of Solomon. By going to these areas, He was ensuring that his work would take a deeper rooting into the soil of the world. 7. Of all the times that he visited, the time that stands out the strongest is the time he came when Sarah had come to visit. She had just become pregnant and wished to see me for my blessing, and so I was thrilled to see her and her traveling companions. She had sent word of her coming through the Druids, but their word got to me only one day before her arrival. She stayed with me for 3 days, and on the second night, Yeshua appeared. I don't know if you can appreciate how odd it was, for Sarah had never met her father, nor Yeshua, his daughter, and yet here they met for the first time, and her father's body had returned to the elements in a flash of light in his resurrection. So now he was in his car body, which emitted a kind of unmistakable light. Both of them were moved, Sarah to tears and Yeshua to great pathos. They spent an hour together, just themselves, walking outside. I do not know what they talked about, but from the time they began until the time that they ended, the sky was filled with falling stars. Before Yeshua had left that evening, just before dawn, as was his way, he placed his hands over Sarah's stomach and blessed the child. Sarah left me the next day filled with an unmistakable sense of peace. And so I have told you what I wish to say about my life as a mother. And now I will turn my story to me as an initiate to the alchemies of Horus, onto the secrets of Isis. 8. I turn now to my beloved sister, my sister in spirit, the mother of Yeshua, also known as Mary. Mary was a high initiate in the cult of Isis, having received her training in Egypt. That is why when she and Joseph fled the king's wrath in Israel, they took flight into Egypt, for she had safety there among the priestesses and priests of Isis. Her training was different than mine, yet we served the same. In order for me to explain my understanding of Mary, I must explain one of the deepest secrets of the Isis cult. For it was believed, and I hold this to be true, that under certain conditions, the goddess herself would incarnate, either at birth or through spiritual initiation. Let me underline that. Mary, the mother of Yeshua, when she was quite young, was recognized for her purity of spirit by the great priestesses of the Isis temples. She was trained as an initiate and reached the highest levels, but rather than becoming a priestess, she was trained to become what we called an incarnate. To be an incarnate is to be a very highly advanced soul and requires undergoing tremendous spiritual training and discipline. In a final initiation, Mary became the holder of an energy stream directly from Isis herself. In this regard, she was an embodiment of the cosmic mother. It is as if there were two, Mary the human, pure of spirit and heart, holding within her a direct portal into the great mother, the creatrix of all matter, of all time and space. Listen, this is some serious thing right there. You understand? You understand what I'm saying? Let me highlight that. Thus, the table was set, so to speak, for the conception of a being of remarkable qualities who would become her son, Yeshua. When Mary underwent what the church refers to as the Immaculate Conception, she was a witness to a celestial and galactic insemination process by which the Father, principle, or spirit was, as we understood this in the Isis cult, transferred his essence into Isis. The mother that receives the seed of the Father. Okay, so let me read that over. When Mary underwent what the church refers to as the Immaculate Conception, she was a witness to a celestial and galactic insemination process by which the Father, principle, or spirit, as we understood this in the Isis cult, transferred his essence into Isis, the mother that receives the seed of the Father. Matter receiving the impulse of spirit. And this highly refined and potent spiritual energy took root in Mary's womb and gave birth to Yeshua. Mary was with the apostles when they came upon me at the well. She immediately recognized me as a fellow initiate by the gold serpent bracelet I wore on my arm and by the seal of Isis which glowed within my car body. For Mary was quite clairvoyant and psychic. The first person whose eyes I met were those of Yeshua, and as I said, I felt transported into other worlds in his immense presence. The second person whose eyes I met were those of his mother. In her eyes was recognition and acknowledgement of my status as a fellow initiate within the Isis cult. And although her training had not been in sex magic as mine has been, she understood that I had been prepared for Yeshua. Between them, I felt lifted up on wings of transcendent love. I felt my spirit soar. Ironic then that the next eyes I would see were those of Yeshua's disciples, who judged me to be a whore, and countless generations have held me this way. But I say to you that in Yeshua's eyes and those of his mother, I was not a whore, but a clear vessel for the healing and nurturing powers of Isis herself. There comes a time in a man's life, whether human or divine, when his mother cannot give him the essence of what he needs. Her love continues, but what is required is sustenance from another woman. I was that woman. Mary recognized me and my status and passed her son to me in that moment by the vow. Mary and I spent much time together, time in which we discussed Yeshua's work, his needs, and my place in his life. It was understood that I was a servant of a greater power. I had been trained for this, but I must tell you that the power of the recognition still shakes me. I still tremble at his recognition. In those many nights and days together, Mary and I attended to the needs of Yeshua and his disciples. And in that period, Mary and I became very close, for I loved her and I love her still. For her physical beauty, the purity of her heart and spirit, and the gentleness with which she dealt the world. Gentleness is major. It is beautiful. It is strength in a way, a different form of strength. I can say from my own clarity that Mary, having served as the vessel of Isis as an incarnate, was a highly developed master, but now having served in these ways, her mastery and perfection, her spiritual perfection is staggering. And she exists within the heavenly realms. Her compassion and love continually flow into all humans. She is available to all, regardless of their beliefs. When someone calls upon her, know that they are heard. I wish now to clarify my understandings. I wish to speak about the sex magic of the Isis cult and the alchemies of Horus. I wish to reveal secrets that an initiate would never have revealed, even under the threat of death. But the times are different now. Time, as you know it, is running out, and I have received permission from the goddess herself. Indeed, I have been asked by the goddess herself to reveal to you some of the most closely guarded secrets of all times. These are revealed to you in hopes that you will elevate yourselves in time. I'll stop there today, and then the next podcast will continue the secrets that she wants to reveal. So what have we learned today? We learned that she was seen as a whore, but that she was an initiate of Isis, a cult. That Mother Mary was also a part of. But Mary was an incarnate of the cosmic mother. She explains the conception of Jesus as a celestial and galactic insemination. Amazing. She explains the first meeting. She explains what her mother and father, where her mother and father were from. She explains where she went after the crucifixion. She lets us know that she did have one daughter and that she lived out the rest of her life in, I believe 16 years in England. And then after her daughter marries at 16, she lives the rest of her life out in Wales. She talks about the car body and how she helped build up even stronger Yeshua's car body and how significant that is. So we're learning some things, some exciting things. It's a love story. She says that's what it is for her, a love story. And I'm excited. So I hope you find this as interesting as I am finding it. And I hope you have a great weekend. We will meet up again next week and continue with the story. I hope all is well with you, that you know you are loved, that you are loved, and be gentle with yourself in this life. All the things that are coming at you. Take time with it, man. And try to see what it's trying to teach you, what it's trying to tell you, what the lessons are. I know I am. And let me tell you, it ain't easy. It's not easy being green. The lessons, they are never ending. But I'm grateful for them because when I get to the next side of it, it's quite beautiful. And I can't wait till the lessons are through love and joy and laughter instead of hard things. Right? Anyways, have a great day, guys. We'll talk again next week. Have a great weekend. Bye.